Hello and welcome to another episode of the D1 Daily Podcast. Burkie and Roons here. Burkie, we've spent a lot of time recently talking about this Tennessee baseball opening. It's been a blast to have these conversations. So this is kind of the bookend final chapter of this. We're going to give some counsel to Josh Elander. He's got the job now. Never been a head coach before. We talked about that's maybe it's a big deal, but it's not a deal breaker for sure. A lot of guys have done really well with that transition, but we want to offer some counsel on that, some advice on that. If we may be so bold, I've never been the head coach.
I feel like you should go first because you were a long-time assistant, and then you went and were a head coach, clearly at different levels. But still, I think a lot of the same principles probably apply. So what would you first advise Josh Elander on?
Yeah. So, by the way, I always think of, if I get to be a head coach twice. I was a very young head coach at Malvern Prep, 25 years old, and then Phoenix College, head junior college coach. And I'll never forget Augie Garrido always saying about coaching, it's not personal, it's just the game. And I remember thinking, I don't like you. Like, I remember thinking that's very well said. And I couldn't be more personal for me. It could not be more personal. So my first piece of advice would be and I'm sure I want to be clear, like we assume Josh has thought of all these things and then some, but I do think it's fun to say out loud. I think the backfilling of the staff, like Tennessee's baseball program didn't just lose Tony V, they lost a member of their coaching staff. And I sometimes worry about head coaches with the backfilling of the staff, like poo-pooing it a little bit because they're, like Josh is used to doing the things he's used to doing. And now he's going to take over this backfill of this spot, which I'm sure he's thought about a lot. It's really important. Josh has got to get those things off of his plate, the things he wants off of his plate. He's not capable of being two human beings. So I think that's the one thing, Burkie, that I would offer is that whatever your plans for this backfill are, execute those with great fervor because you need that extra body and you need you to free yourself up for the job that you've just been promoted to. It's a big, big job.
Yeah, I think to a degree, though, Roons, I think part of the power of that program is those roles were already filled. So I think Tony had already hired Ross Kivett back from Houston with the assumption that Josh Elander was going to leave to be a head coach. And so situation is different because now Tony's left and now Josh is the head coach there. To me, I'd be shocked if you don't get now they did something that was very underreported was that Luke Bonfield went to Pitt.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
And he's now the recruiting coordinator at Pitt. Now, again, to Danny White's credit and to Tony Vitello's credit for, I'm sure, fighting for it, Tennessee was as well staffed as anybody in the country. And some of these guys had different roles, but we're all with, like any functional staff, all excelling in those roles. So Luke Bonfield left this offseason and now Tony leaves. So that's actually two pieces. That being said, they already had Ross Kivett and Ricky Martinez on staff. So Ross Kivett is going to move into Josh Elander's role. Now, does that mean Josh Elander comes off of third base? That's a little more X's and O's-ish, but there maybe is some metaphorical observation in that. Like, hey, man, if the offense was awesome when you coaching third base and Tony in the dugout, maybe you stay at third base and let Ross stay in the dugout and Ricky goes to first base. You know what I mean? But I will say, I think Bonfield was a big part of the in-dugout hitter presence too. I think he was a big part of the approach and the preparation and the mood in there because that was kind of Luke's deal. I think he was kind of the assistant hitting coach in a lot of regards. So there is a position or two to fill for sure. But similarly, I think Tony had kind of come alongside and taken some steps to fill in case Frank maybe called it a career or, pursued something else, and they had Josh Reynolds there in that place. But I think in general, you're right. There's a spot or two to fill on the staff, But there's a lot of reasons this is a very unique situation. And one of them is I think most of the major moving parts are already in-house. I really think that.
Yep. Yeah. And it's another one of Tony. We've said this out loud many times, but Tony, when it came to staff development and staff, like putting a good staff together, that's one of his superpowers. Really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
You got one, Burkie?
I don't think it can be undersold how little there's going to be a huge void from a personality standpoint, but how I think little the baseball operation piece will change. It will change, but very, very minimal relative to a normal turnover or coaching change or something like that.
Yep. A lot of talent on that staff. 100%. What about you got a number two, or you want me to keep ripping through here?
No, I mean, for me, the number two is, and I don't think we'll find this out till the summer. For me, the number two is winning the draft and star portal acquisition. I think there is a piece of Tony's greatness that he was really, really good at selling stars on coming to Tennessee, whether that be star recruits that are facing the draft or star portal players coming in. And part of that is leveraging your collective and your big boosters to make the money piece of that work. But the other part of that is just, the ability to recruit. Now, I do think Josh has proven himself as a world-class recruiter, different style than Tony, but relationship guy. And so I expect him to do well at that. But I do think that's the part that I think, for me, honestly, will be the biggest, most interesting piece to follow, how that process falls relative to how it's fallen over the last few years.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I have a point on this that's similar to what you're saying, which is like, I'm not saying Josh needs to unload the day-to-day of recruiting. He certainly needs to unload some of it. But I do think, I think the head coach's job at this level, resource acquisition is critical. Like, you could have the best staff, the best coach, but if your opponents have way better resources than you do, as far as NIL, those types of things, and it does feel like revenue share is all fairly, everyone's in the same ballpark on revenue share. Everyone's got full scholarships now. When I say everyone in this stratosphere. But the NIL feels like that's where it's going to get. And NIL means your boosters, your alumni, IBM, bad example, but let's go with it. IBM's not giving Tennessee baseball an NIL deal, right? Like, the NIL deals are related to people, companies that have a relationship with your program. And I do, Tony was a wizard at that. And I do think Josh will have to free up some space to go build those relationships, maintain those relationships. And maybe the athletic department does a ton of that for you. I don't know. But I think that part is really, you just got to have those resources to be able to acquire those types of free agents, if you will.
Yeah. And I think this kind of leads to, it's a very similar transition, I think, or piece of the puzzle. Tony, such a big personality, so famous. For the most part, the dinners, the banquets, the speaking engagements, I'm sure Josh had 1,000 offers to go do hitting clinics or coaches clinics, but I don't think Josh has had to be the face of the social engagement part of Tennessee baseball. And for a married guy with 3 young kids, clearly he's been out of the house plenty, recruiting. Mm-hmm. So but like you said, the ability to leverage your staff to now, I think, probably leave the house to do things that he just hasn't done. I don't know if he'll be comfortable doing those things and enjoy those things, or he won't. But there is some of that is part of the job. Not all of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure Tony's probably advised him on hey, man, I did this and that and the other thing because I just had a blast doing them. But you probably don't have to put those things on your schedule. But this and that, you have to be at those. You know what I'm saying? And so, I'm sure Josh has counted the cost and observed a lot of those things. But you and I both know, thinking about doing those things, agreeing with your spouse on doing those things and actually being the one to do those things are two different things.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and again, I want to reiterate, we believe that Josh just thought through all of these things, but it's just fun to say them out loud because it is a big difference. This was absolutely the right move by Tennessee. We all talked about that, but it's still a big move. It's still, losing to Tony V is a massive transition. Another thing I wrote down, Burkie, is that I wrote down the phrase, the team is watching. And whether that comes to discipline or the lineup, and I guess my counsel to Josh Elander would be like, you really got to trust yourself. Like you're ready for this. Well, no one's ready for it, but you're as ready as you can be. And just, you're not going to make every perfect decision, but the team is watching. I think I've heard you say it. What's unique about this transition is he's coaching a team that he was the assistant coach for. He doesn't get to, he's not solely going from Clemson to Florida. He's not Corbs going from Clemson to Florida or to Vandy, Butch Thompson going from Mississippi State to Auburn, where you get a fresh start with a new group of people and players. This is the same group. They've just got to see you wearing a different hat. And I think that's a special set of circumstances.
Yeah, and I think we observed some of the tension last year with Mike Early. Like it is a different spot to be the hitting coach than to be the head coach. And so the tension there of you're largely Mr. Positive, and now maybe you still are, but some of that changes a little bit. Like somebody's got to deal with the issue. Somebody's got to tell somebody they're not playing that day. Somebody's got to handle a demotion. Somebody's got to handle the parents or the agents. And I'm not saying Josh didn't do some of that, but again, the head coach handles most of those really difficult things. That is a new hat. And so, I think those are more, I think what was the title of the pod? What was our premise again to begin with?
Counsel we're giving Josh Elander.
Yeah, so some of this we devolved into things we're interested to observe more so than counsel. If I'm getting back to counseling Josh, I would say, and I would be shocked if this isn't the case, but I would say everything you already were, you were the best at, keep doing those things. Mm-hmm. And if you really look at what Tony did, Tony kept recruiting. Like when he went from Arkansas to Tennessee, he kept recruiting everywhere. He kept hitting infield. He kept throwing BP. Like I would counsel Josh to do as much as he can exactly the same way he's been doing, and then really get into the weeds with Frank, especially on okay, what are the 3 to 5 things that Tony really owned that I didn't, that I need to step into. And that could be kind of a global thing, or it could be really a day-to-day, it could be schedule, it could be, there's a lot of different things there. But that would be more of the counsel piece, because what you don't want is to take your thumb off the things that made you great as a coach, because ultimately you are going to be judged based on how many baseball games you win.
That's right. Yeah, and Tennessee was really unique in this way already anyway. You would know better than me, Burkie, but I don't think Tony was the bad cop with the pitchers. Frank is. Yes. Yeah. And I think Josh really, I think between Tony and Josh and Frank, it was a very, unique blend of who's the good cop, who's the bad cop. But, again, Tony, as we've said many times, very much a player's coach in a unique way, a way very unique to his personality. Here's another one I wrote, Burkie, is I wrote down for Josh Elander. And I'm sure, again, one of the reasons we like Josh as a candidate so much is because he's been around great baseball people. But I wrote down the question, who is my mentor? Because this is about to get real lonely. I don't think it's a great idea to bring your baseball dilemmas home to your spouse. They've got enough pressure on them as it is. They're emotionally invested just like you are. You're not an assistant coach anymore where you can vent to your fellow assistant coaches. But you are a human, and you do need to be able to talk through those things. Yeah. I think it's a mistake that a lot of leaders make as they try to go it alone. And I think having as a high profile leader I think having a mentor or mentors is really important, and quite honestly, not something I've ever been great at. But so what is it? Do as I say, not as I do. But
I
I
don't
think
know. I feel like you lean on our thread a lot for a lot of your fantasy football dilemmas and pressure
and
and
look at where it's got
stress.
me.
I feel like you do really good about that.
Yes, thank you. So I don't know
No,
what you think
I think
about
you're
that.
right. I think Josh
Yeah,
has proven himself to be a very relational person. So I'm sure he
yeah,
already has some of those people in mind. And my guess is probably people that he's already leaning into. Um, his generation of coach is now getting to that age where they're advancing. Some of them are head coaches. A lot of them are in big recruiting coordinator chairs. And then he still has the people that he played for and coached under early on that I'm sure he can reach out to. So Josh has a very wise vibe to him. Something tells me that'll be something he already. And again, he's got Frank Anderson sitting right next to him. I think that's his. The fact that Frank and Quentin Eberhardt, the strength coach, stayed had to be two pieces that Danny White ended up feeling very comfortable about making this decision.
yeah, 100%. And Quentin Eberhardt, like we've said this a lot too, is that he's part of the secret sauce for Tennessee too. That's someone that Tony leaned on big time, and he's very much a part of the heart and soul of this program.
You also had Tyler Johnson was the sports administrator, and they had kind of done a reorg, and that got reorged. So Tyler is back to be in charge of baseball, and then Jeff Wood, the longtime trainer, who literally his first year was my junior year. So again, those are big pieces. Those are, I mean, gosh, day-to-day operations. How much do you need to trust your trainer?
Yeah, 100. Just you're right. It's such a great environment around Josh right now. Here's another thing I wrote, Burkie, that, and again, I don't want this to come off as a lecture. Certainly, I'm no expert, but I think these are things that are fun to think about out loud. I wrote down Josh is going to need to find his media voice. And I know that's like an easy cliche thing to say, but here's my experience. You're going to speak to the media in some moments where you are feeling joy that you didn't know you were capable of. Like there's going to be some really high highs, and having the right message in those moments is going to be something you're going to want to do. And you're going to have to speak to the media on days where it's the most disgusted you've ever been in your entire life.
Yeah.
And I think being premeditated about that is really important.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think the post game everything such and such said after this game column is going to be a lot shorter and drier.
Yes.
And I don't think Josh is like a robot. I think he communicates on a very human level, but it will not be the open stream of consciousness that Tony Vitello's pressers were. So
yeah.
I think Josh is, this is a similar trait to Tony. It's just a very different output. They're both humans that are extremely comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
And so Josh isn't going to try to entertain. That's not who he is. And he's not going to feel bad or try to create something that isn't comfortable to him. And Tony wasn't going to not say something that he felt like saying. He just was going to say it. Now we can only imagine the things that Tony actually probably did hold back from saying, considering some of the things he did say. But I think you're right. I think the human level of the ownership that you do feel once it's kind of your name on the building, so to speak, will change. It just has to. But I also, it doesn't concern me that he won't handle those things well.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. Like, this is and what you said a second ago, like, Josh is a very talented person who is very confident, and that's part of what makes him a great candidate here. So I got a final thing, and then I got a question I want to ask you. So the other thing I wrote down is establishing a communication cadence. I just think this job gets really busy, and so one of the things that can be easily lost is that day-to-day communication with the players. I feel like life coaches are constantly giving big time coaches that advice is that like walk through the stretch line, spend moments with the players. And I just think what I see in my day job that's smart is having a cadence, like just have meetings with the players on your calendar pre-booked so that you can't skip them. I think that because I do worry that that's the one thing you're trying to create a different relationship, but then it just becomes distance instead of like the right different relationship. Here's where I want to go with that, though, Ricky. Like, here's my question. Do we think we know Tennessee's going to stay talented in baseball? Like, that's the big part of this whole thing. They're going to have great players, and great players win a lot of games. Do you think the personality of the way they play, not like X's and O's, but like, do you think the personality of the program will change?
I think to a degree. I think some of the say like the Daddy had and Daddy in the home run fur coat, like those staples. I think the type of player that has been attracted to Tennessee tends to be the type of player that likes to express themselves. Let's put it that way. Between lines, I don't think that will change. Clearly, Josh has been a part of recruiting that type of player. But I think you and I both agree. Forgive me, interrupt me if you don't. In general, teams take on the personality of their head coach.
Mm-hmm.
They just do. Not every time, all the time, and you don't want to get too detailed in unpacking that saying, but I think in general that is mostly true. And I think because there is a very different personality type between Tony and Josh, I think over time that will just show itself. How it shows itself exactly, we'll see, but it will show itself, I think, in some regard.
Yeah, I agreed.
Also think in some regard, back to your previous point, Josh has always gotten to know the position players at a very high level. He coaches them every single day in the cage, all those kinds of things. I think the challenge for him will be more, not that he's recruited a lot of those pitchers, right? It's not like he didn't know them, but just probably has to be a little more intentional on the pitching side. That would be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
And probably just with some of the head coach responsibilities, not lose the connection he has with the hitters, because my guess is as a head coach, you're not going to be able to be in the cage as much, would be my guess.
Yeah, very fair. It's going to be fun. Like, this replacing Tony V was not on our bingo card, as of 2 weeks ago, but now here we are. And it was going to be a unique challenge, but, Josh Elander, one of the most talented coaches in our game, great pedigree, very bright, very, just, again, the reason Tennessee has gotten to this point, Josh Elander is a huge part of that. Like the reasons that he was very much part of the engine that got them here. So it's going to be fun to watch. I still, again, I want to say it out loud. San Francisco Giants, MLB, you get our guy for 3 to 5 years. Don't get comfortable. This is not a rent to own. This is a pure rental.
Lease. The one thing I will say, this is a kind of a global observation. We're seeing this now. College football is insane right now. But if you really think about it, historically, it's hard to keep insane momentum, mojo, enthusiasm, whatever you say, around a program longer than 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Really hard to do. And Tony was going into year 9. And when your fire burns as bright as Tony, there is a piece of this now that he's off to this big, crazy, new, extremely famous opportunity. There is a part of it that's like, it's probably really healthy for Tony to go do something different just because he's so he's so all in. And it's probably a really, in a weird way, we'll see. It might be a way for the momentum to carry maybe even longer. In a weird way.
Yeah.
Who knows? That's less about like Tennessee baseball today and more about like, I mean, again, look at Penn State, look at Penn State football or Clemson football, or I'm sure you could tell me, I'm sure we could come up with other examples where it's like you have that 8 or 10 year run where it's just like, whoa, you're climbing, you're achieving heights, you're repeating those heights, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's somebody else over here doing it, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense or if that's going to hold true.
This made me think of Virginia baseball when you said that, Burkie. Like Brian O'Connor and Kevin McMullen get to Virginia. They have this, 10-ish year run that was incredible. And then like stumble, like have a couple bad drafts.
Yeah.
And they had so somebody's got to reinvent the momentum. In that case, it was Oak and Mac did it themselves. But this is, I agree with that point wholeheartedly. It's like momentum is not infinite.
Yeah. And it's like you get a new vibe without much new, but there is there's a new person that has everything to prove, and usually the way you start these great runs is somebody insanely special who's got everything to prove that just goes in there and just climbs Mount Everest. And here you get all this carryover momentum, but it's a new person at a stage in life where there's a lot of fire in your belly, 35 years old. You got wisdom, you got experience, and you got all this fire still left in your belly. And now you get you might get another 8 to 10 year run. So it'll be interesting.
100%. Well, that's good. Yeah. And newsflash, Tennessee has great players this year and 2 classes of great players coming. And Check's notes, we're told that great players solve a lot of problems.
That's right.
So, yes, very cool. All right, good. There you go. Josh Elander, we're fired up for this. It's going to be fun, very compelling. Obviously, a huge decision in the sport, but going to be very fun to watch. That is it. Everyone have a great week, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Daily Podcast.